There is one fear that is guaranteed to be brought up every time I tell someone that we homeschool our kids. I am a business school professor, and we have been homeschooling our kids since 2017. And in all of those years, the most common question is, aren't you worried about their socialization? So in this video, I'm going to share 4 points that have helped me see why this concern is overblown, why public school is more harmful than most people believe, and why homeschooling might actually be the best way to socialize your kids. People like to imagine that public school is like a bowling alley with bumper lanes. It's a safe environment for kids to interact, and anyone who goes too far astray is going to get bumped back into the middle, and that way they can just succeed and knock a few pins over. But deep down, people know that this isn't true. Just ask anyone if they want to work in an environment where the office is described as like being back in high school. People don't use that term to describe a healthy, well-functioning environment. They know that that's a description of something that's toxic. That's because at its worst, school is full of gossiping and bullying. But let's not even talk about that right now. I'm going to talk about the worst parts later on. Let's take school at its best, so that way we can really think about that part and decide if that's what we want. Even in the best situations, school presents tons of problems, and I think we've just accepted that that's how life is, but it doesn't have to be. I'm going to share one of my elementary school memories, and you can let me know if you have something similar. I have a distinct memory in 3rd grade of a friend who finished a sheet of 100 multiplication problems before the teacher had even handed them out to the whole class. And I think that memory sticks with me because I looked at it maybe with a little bit of jealousy, wishing that I could finish the sheet as fast as he could. Now, here's the thing. I am really good at math. I actually ended up minoring in math in college. My research deals with a lot of math. I am not bad at math, but I have this distinct memory of someone who it was better than me at math. And there are a lot of kids who those comparisons come natural and they end up being a huge part of their identity. They decide they're not good at math. They decide that they're just not going to put the effort in. They shut off whole paths in their future because one person could do a math problem a few seconds faster than them. Like, that's a socialization issue. They are seeing people around them and they're constantly comparing themselves, and they then decide what their identity is based on the performance of other people, not based on their own inherent skills and talents. Homeschool, on the other hand, can meet kids where they're at and make sure that they're comparing their current performance to their past performance, not to other kids. I have had in my own family kids who have struggled with certain topics, but over time they develop the skills necessary to do well. I worry that if they were in a public school situation, those social pressures would have led them to be discouraged and not try at all. So my first response to the socialization question is that even in the best situation, a public school can lead to socialization issues that can influence a kid's entire life. Well, let's talk about school at its worst. I said we would do it. Let's just address it right now. I know this is going to be a rare situation for many students, but it's still important to address because once we understand this aspect, we'll realize that the concerns about homeschool and socialization are ignoring a massive blind spot. The people who are concerned about homeschool and socialization probably can relate to an experience I had in high school. It's the first day of my junior year. The summer break's over, I'm back in school, and I am so excited to be in school. Now, this is a unique year because on the last day of my sophomore year, I was moving. My family was headed to a new city, and I had said goodbye to friends that I assumed I would never see again. Well, thankfully, the situation that caused us to move, my dad's job, something changed right at that moment, and they ended up sending us right back. It was a very expensive summer vacation, but I was so excited because I got to go back to my friends. Now, this was before social media. I didn't have a way to communicate to a lot of people that like I was coming back. So I'm coming in on my first day of junior year, surprising so many of my friends who thought they would never see me again. It was fun. It was exciting. It was so cool to be back in that situation. And I was so excited for school to start. I loved being back in school. But for a lot of kids, that transition from summer to the school year is not as exciting. In fact, for the kids who are facing the worst aspects of school socialization, this can be a question quite literally of survival. As I said, I'm a professor, I read a lot of research, and let me show you the most disheartening graph I've ever seen in research. This line here is the pattern for suicide rates across the year for young adults. Is that the right term for it? Early adults? Kids who are 19 to about 24. You can see that it's pretty consistent across the year. Now, let's put on it the suicide rates for teenagers, people in high school. What you can see is that transition from May to July sees a huge drop. And then that transition from August to September, October, it spikes up again until we get to kind of the last couple weeks of December. This is huge evidence that as kids are leaving school, they feel much safer. And that as they get back into school, that's where they feel those questions of self-worth, depression, all of these bad aspects of socialization, because they're in an environment that is much more toxic. I'm not trying to fearmonger about school. Like I said, this is a rare event. The odds are overwhelming in your favor that your kid is not going to be like this in public school. But it does demonstrate something important. The people who are worried about socialization and homeschool are speaking from a vantage point of someone who had a good experience in high school. My second response to the socialization question is that we often don't hear the perspectives of people who had that bad socialization experience. Okay, so far this has been a little bit of a downer. We've only been focusing on the negative aspects of socialization at public school. What about positive aspects of being homeschooled? Most people who claim that public school is this key ingredient for socialization tend to forget the transition they made from being in school to not being in school. But I have a vivid memory associated with it. It's the first week of graduate school. I am brand new at this school, and we are having a little social event where we're out on the lawn, we're eating hot dogs. I don't remember the full details of it, but I do remember that I was standing with my classmates because this party was full of all the other students in the graduate program and the faculty, but we didn't know anyone else there. We're talking to each other, getting to know each other, and a professor approaches our group. And this is a little intimidating because a professor, like, these are big deal people, right? Like, these are possibly people who will influence our career. These are people who have lots of status out there. This is a big deal. And he starts talking to us. I start talking back. I start asking questions, keeping the conversation going. And I'm feeling pretty good until a few minutes later, I realize that I'm the only one talking. My friends are standing there just kind of observing. I think they didn't know what to do in that circumstance. And I realized that those social skills are something that take a lot of practice to develop. Now, I am not a homeschooler. I'm not saying that this happened because, I was not homeschooled myself. I'm not saying that I learned that while I was in homeschool. I had to learn that while I was a missionary for my church for 2 years, and I was talking to people from all different types of backgrounds. But homeschool kids, they're not raised in an environment where their social engine is being determined by 20 other peers their same age and have all these immature social responses and feedback telling them, like, the way to do this is to be conforming to this peer group that is your same age. No, like, my kids get complimented all the time for their ability to talk to adults, to engage in good conversations. This whole idea of homeschoolers being really good at talking to adults has actually become a meme. The truth is that we spend 75% of our life surrounded by people from different backgrounds and different generations. So my third response to people when they ask about homeschooling and socialization is that, like, I don't want my kids socialized by a group of peers that is a very small sliver of the demographic they're going to encounter for the rest of their lives. But what if you're still interested in getting your kids to interact with other kids their same age? Of course, that's great, as long as you understand what martial arts and cooking have in common. I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 4.5 years, and shortly after I started, they opened a class for homeschoolers. It was during the day, and at the beginning, they just had a few kids, and I think they wondered the viability of the class. But over time, the class grew, and even just last week, I saw they posted a picture of an in-house tournament where they had enough kids that they could actually go through a bracket and have them win medals and all that stuff. Super cool to see that it's grown. My kids didn't participate in jiu-jitsu, but about the same time, a local cooking supply store opened up cooking classes for homeschoolers. My daughter signed up and she had so much fun making pastries, learning about knife skills. It was a great experience for her. Businesses are recognizing that there is a growing homeschool niche. They love homeschoolers because they're available throughout the day at these off-peak hours where their store is open, they're paying for workers, but they don't have many customers. And they realize we can offer classes to these homeschoolers. And homeschoolers like these classes because they're interested in learning different skills through extracurriculars, and they are excited to meet other homeschoolers. These activities are kind of like the leaky cauldron in Harry Potter. Like, only the people who know they're there can see them. But even if you're not interested in doing the homeschool things, you just want to do like the regular extracurricular activities, like, most kids nowadays are participating in activities that are not associated with their school. They're joining volleyball teams, they're doing dance teams that are outside of the school structure. And that's where they're actually spending most of their time and most of their socialization. More than ever, kids' friends aren't defined by the kids in their classes or in their neighborhood. It's defined by the kids who have the same interests as them. The reality is that there are a ton of opportunities for your kids to interact with other people through extracurricular activities. And homeschooling does not limit your access to those activities. In fact, it actually expands your access to them. I'm interested in how you respond to the socialization question, or what kind of socialization benefits you've seen from homeschooling. So if you go underneath this video, right next to that subscribe button, you'll see that you can leave a comment. Please let me know, and we can talk about it in a future video.